Princess Alara learned the truth about her husband on the night he was supposed to die. She stood frozen at the edge of the stone balcony, cold rain clinging to her golden crown, listening to steel scream against steel below. The palace alarms wailed like wounded beasts. Torches flickered wildly, throwing broken shadows across the courtyard. And in the center of it all was the man everyone called a commoner. Jonah. Alara's fingers trembled as she gripped the railing. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. This was not how royal marriages were meant to end. She had married Jonah 3 months earlier. A political sacrifice. A quiet ending to a long war. The alien High Council had demanded it. A symbolic union between her ancient starborn house and the strange, newly risen species called humans. They had offered her a man with no title, no land, and no recorded victories. A translator, a helper, a nobody. Perfect, they said, harmless. Alara had believed them. Jonah had always moved carefully through the palace like someone afraid to take up space. He bowed too deeply, spoke too softly, wore simple clothes even when given silk. He smiled easily, though it never reached his eyes. The nobles laughed behind his back. The princess married a tool, they whispered. Alara never defended him. Not out loud. Below her now, the courtyard was chaos. Black-armored assassins poured through the shattered gate, blades humming with energy meant to slice through royal shields. Guards fell one by one, their alien weapons sparking uselessly against the attacker's armor. Alara searched desperately for Jonah. She found him near the fountain. Unarmed. Surrounded. Her breath caught in her throat. No, she whispered. One of the assassins shoved Jonah to his knees. Another raised a blade over his head, the glowing edge reflected in the rain like a falling star. Alara turned to run. She never made it 2 steps. A sound cut through the storm. A note of metal so pure and sharp that the air itself seemed to split. Jonah stood. The assassin who had been holding him collapsed without a sound, his armor opened cleanly from shoulder to hip. Another attacker staggered back, staring at his severed arm in disbelief. Jonah held a sword. Not alien. Not ceremonial. Human. Dark steel, plain grip, no glow, no markings. It looked old. It moved like it was alive. Alara's legs gave out. She sank to her knees, staring. Jonah did not shout. He did not roar. He did not announce himself. He stepped forward. Each movement was calm, measured, final. An assassin lunged. Jonah turned slightly, blade whispering through rain and bone. Another fired an energy bolt. Jonah twisted, the beam slicing empty air as his sword pierced the attacker's chest. One by one, the killers fell. Not with spectacle, with certainty. The courtyard grew silent, except for rain hitting stone. Jonah stood alone among the bodies. His breathing was slow, controlled, as if this was not the first time. Alara rose shakily and hurried down the stairs, her guards forgotten. Her dress soaked through as she crossed the courtyard, her boots slipping in blood and water. Jonah, she said, her voice breaking. He turned. For the first time since she had met him, he did not look small. He looked tired. I told them I was done, Jonah said quietly. Alara stared at the sword in his hand. Done with what? He glanced at the fallen assassins, then at the dark sky above the palace. With being useful. Her chest tightened. You're not a commoner. No, he agreed, I'm not. She stepped closer, searching his face. The calm, gentle man she had married was still there, but behind him stood something older, sharper, dangerous. You could have told me, she whispered. Jonah met her eyes. Would you have married me if I had? Alara had no answer. Distant horns echoed from beyond the palace walls. More enemies, or worse, the council's response. Jonah wiped his blade clean on the rain-soaked stone. and slid it into a sheath she had never seen before. "I will protect you tonight," he said. "After that, we need to talk." "About what?" Illyra asked. He looked back once, his gaze steady and unreadable. "About why the galaxy buried my name, and why it was starting to remember it again." The council chamber smelled of ozone and fear. Illyra felt it the moment she entered. The tall crystal pillars glowed dimly, reacting to her unease. Around the circular table sat the High Council of Aurelian, ancient beings with elongated forms, jeweled eyes, and voices trained to command entire systems. Jonah stood beside her, silent, still, watching everything. "They breached the inner gates," Counselor Threx said coldly. "That alone is unacceptable." His many eyes shifted to Jonah, but what concerns us more is how they were stopped. Illyra lifted her chin. "My husband saved my life." A low murmur spread through the chamber. Jonah said nothing. "You are recorded as a civilian," Threx continued. "No military registration, no combat history, no titles." He leaned forward, "Yet 12 assassins lie dead by your hand." Jonah finally spoke, 14. The chamber went still. Illyra felt a strange chill run down her spine. "That weapon," another counselor hissed. "Human steel should not cut phase armor." Jonah's eyes flicked to Illyra for half a heartbeat, then back to the council. "It wasn't forged to," he said. "It was forged to end wars." The council erupted. Accusations flew like shards of glass. Illegal weapons, deception, breach of treaty. Illyra's hands curled into fists. "Enough," she snapped. Silence fell again, sharper this time. "He is my husband," she said. "You approved this marriage." "We approved a symbol," Threx replied, "not a concealed blade." Jonah smiled faintly. There was no humor in it. They were dismissed. Not forgiven. Not protected. Only watched. Back in their chambers, Illyra paced. Jonah stood by the window, looking out over the city lights. The rain had stopped, but the sky still felt heavy. "You lied to me," she said. He nodded once, yes. Her voice trembled. Was any of it real? He turned slowly. All of it was. Illyra stopped packing. "Then tell me the truth now." Jonah hesitated. That scared her more than the blade. "I was born on a frontier world," he began. "A place no one cared about until humans proved they could survive there." Illyra listened, her heart pounding. "We fought things your histories don't mention, creatures older than empires, wars that didn't end with treaties." He looked down at his hands. "When humans fight something that cannot be reasoned with, we learn quickly." "You were a soldier," Illyra said softly. "Yes. An officer." "No." She frowned. "I was the one sent in after officers failed," Jonah said. The room felt colder. "You were an executioner," she whispered. He met her gaze. "I was a finisher." Illyra swallowed hard. Images flashed in her mind. Jonah smiling in the gardens, Jonah cooking quietly at night, Jonah listening more than speaking. "I married a weapon," she said. Jonah stepped back as if struck. "No," he said firmly. "You married a man who refused to be one anymore." A sudden knock shattered the moment. Hard. Urgent. Illyra opened the door to find Captain Vyark of the Palace Guard, his scales dulled with stress. "Your Highness," he said, "the Council has ordered your husband placed under containment." Illyra's blood went cold. "For questioning," Vyark added quickly. "They fear panic." Jonah let out a slow breath. "So it begins," he murmured. "No," Illyra said, stepping between them. "He stays with me." Vyark hesitated. "Princess." "He stays," she repeated. "Or I walk into that chamber and tell the galaxy what really saved this palace tonight." The captain bowed stiffly and withdrew. Silence returned. Jonah looked at her with something close to disbelief. You didn't have to do that. Yes, she said, I did. Later that night, Ilara lay awake while Jonah sat on the floor near the door, awake and alert. You don't trust them, she said quietly. No. You don't trust me either, she added. He glanced at her. I trust you enough to stay. Her chest tightened at that. Far below the palace, something moved in the shadows. Not an assassin. Not a soldier. Something older. Watching. Waiting. And whispering a name the galaxy had tried very hard to forget. Jonah Vale. The night air smelled of wet stone and fear. Ilara sat on the edge of the balcony, knees drawn to her chest, watching the city below. The lights flickered like distant stars, and every shadow seemed alive. Jonah was silent beside her, leaning on the railing, eyes scanning the horizon as if he could see beyond the city, beyond the planet. Why didn't you tell me? She asked finally. Her voice was barely audible over the whisper of the wind. Jonah didn't answer at first. He only tightened his grip on the railing, the muscles in his arms tensing. Finally, he spoke, slow and deliberate. Because the truth isn't something you unwrap and use casually, he said. It's like fire. If you hold it wrong, it burns everything around you. Ilara's stomach twisted. And the galaxy, they're all flames waiting to ignite. Jonah's jaw tightened. Some are ashes. Below them a faint hum grew. Not from the city, not from the palace, something alive. Ilara froze. Her hands gripped the stone railing. Jonah's head tilted slightly. A small, almost imperceptible movement, but enough for her to know he had noticed too. A shadow slid across the rooftops, quick, silent, deliberate. Ilara's heart skipped. They know we're here, Jonah said, or they've been waiting for me. Ilara looked at him, her blue eyes wide in the moonlight. Waiting for you. He nodded. Some of the creatures I fought, they never forget. The first strike came without warning. A massive black shape lunged from the rooftops. Its claws glimmered with a strange, sickly light. Its eyes two molten spheres fixed on Jonah. Jonah didn't flinch. His hand went to the sheath at his side. He drew the blade in one fluid motion. Ilara gasped. The blade hummed as if alive, resonating with a sound she didn't know could exist. It cut through the night like a falling star. And then the shadow was gone. What was that? She whispered. Jonah didn't answer. He was scanning the rooftops again, blade ready. It's one of the hunters, he said finally. Old, relentless, trained on me long before I married you. Ilara swallowed hard. Why now? Why tonight? He finally turned to her. His eyes, calm and unwavering, held something she hadn't seen before, an edge of pain buried deep. Because some debts, he said quietly, aren't forgotten, they're collected. Before she could ask more, another shadow moved, closer this time, faster. Jonah moved first. The blade was a blur. Metal sang through the air. The creature shrieked, a sound that shook the stones beneath her feet. Ilara felt her legs weaken. She had married a man she thought she knew. She had married someone gentle, someone soft, someone human in every small way. And yet the man who stood before her now was a predator. Calm, precise, unyielding. A storm contained in flesh and steel. The fight ended as abruptly as it began. The hunter lay dismembered at Jonah's feet. He wiped the blade on his coat, then slid it back into the sheath. Ilara stepped forward, heart hammering. Jonah, why didn't you tell me it was this? He looked at her, eyes dark but tired. Because you didn't need to know, not until it mattered. Her hands clenched his coat. But it matters now. Jonah's gaze softened. For the first time that night, he reached out and brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. Yes, he admitted, now it matters. The city slept below, unaware of the shadows and hunters that prowled the rooftops. Ilara knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. She had married a human, a commoner. And yet, that man held the power to silence monsters older than empires, wielding a blade that spoke louder than words. Something shifted in her chest, a mix of awe, fear, and a dangerous thrill. Jonah, she breathed, who else is out there? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked to the horizon, his voice low, almost a whisper. Enemies, old ones, and someone who's been waiting a very long time to see me fall. Ilara's heart skipped. The wind carried a faint, terrible whisper, too distant to understand, yet chilling enough to sink deep into her bones. Jonah's grip tightened on his sword. And somewhere in the darkness, the first true threat of the night watched and waited. Dawn broke over Aurelian, but it offered no comfort. The palace walls, once shining crystal, now bore the scars of the night's battle. Stone was chipped, guards limping, and whispers of fear hummed through the corridors. Ilara moved quickly through the halls, her wet dress replaced with her formal gown, but her mind was far from ceremony. She needed answers, and she needed them from Jonah. He followed silently, his dark armor clinking softly with each step. The sword at his side gleamed even in the pale light, a constant reminder of what she had married. "Jonah," she said at last, breaking the silence. "They'll try again. The council won't forgive any of this. You can't just stand there and fight shadows forever." He stopped, his eyes, calm yet unreadable, met hers. "They think I can be controlled, that's their mistake." Ilara's jaw tightened. "They'll try to control you anyway, or worse, they'll try to use me as leverage." Jonah stepped closer. "Then they'll learn what happens when someone threatens what I protect." Her heart raced. Protect her? The council chamber buzzed with tension as Ilara and Jonah entered. Counselor Threx's jeweled eyes flared with fury. "You are still alive, human. Why?" he demanded. Jonah said nothing. He only stood behind her, his presence calm but unyielding. The council had no choice but to watch. Threx's gaze shifted between them. "You defied protocol, endangered the princess, and yet—" His voice dropped, almost unwilling. "The palace remains intact." Ilara swallowed, her fingers brushing Jonah's arm. "It's not just me you should worry about," she said softly. "It's your own safety." Jonah's expression remained steady. "I am capable. You should have known that when you chose to marry me." A sudden alarm shattered the chamber. Red lights flared. The palace gates again were under attack. Ilara's stomach twisted. She had expected danger, but not so soon, not so blatant. Jonah moved to the doorway, blade in hand. "Stay behind me," he ordered. She hesitated. "I'm not staying behind." "You don't have to fight," he said quietly, "but you will survive if you trust me." Her breath caught. Trust him. After everything. After the lies, the danger, the uncertainty. Yet, looking into his eyes, she felt the weight of absolute certainty. The battle came swift and brutal. This time it was not assassins, but creatures unlike anything she had ever seen, tall, sinewy, with glowing runes etched into their skin. They moved with unnatural speed, claws scraping the stone walls. Jonah was a whirlwind, each strike precise, each motion practiced, deadly. He moved with grace that belied the raw power behind it. Ilara's eyes widened. She had seen him kill before, yes, but never like this. It was poetry wrapped in violence. And yet in the chaos he protected her. Always, no one could reach her. Finally, silence returned. The creatures lay scattered, broken. Jonah's chest rose and fell with controlled breaths. His blade dripped, but his expression remained calm, almost weary. Ilara approached him, hands shaking. How are you not even exhausted?" He sheathed his sword and turned to her, wet hair plastered to his face. "Because I've been through worse, and because I will never let anyone harm you." Her chest tightened. A mix of fear, relief, and admiration surged inside her. For the first time, she saw him not as a stranger or a weapon, but as someone willing to face unimaginable danger for her sake. That night in the quiet of the royal chambers, Ilara found herself studying him. His face bore faint scars, his hands strong and calloused, yet his eyes, always, softened when they met hers. "Jonah," she said finally, voice trembling, "do you love me?" He paused, his hand brushed hers. "I've protected you, feared for you, trusted you, I do." Ilara's heart swelled. I think I love you too." He smiled faintly, a rare, unguarded smile. "Good, because whatever comes next, we face it together." Outside, the night was quiet but not peaceful. Shadows still lingered beyond the palace walls. Unknown enemies waited. Ancient threats stirred. But inside the chambers, for the first time since her marriage, Alara felt safe. Not because the palace was secure, not because the council approved, but because the man she had married, a man she thought was ordinary, was anything but. He was extraordinary, and he was hers. Somewhere in the darkness, eyes watched, calculating, waiting. And the whispers carried a single thought. Jonah Vale, you cannot hide forever. The sun rose pale over the city of Aurelian, but peace was only an illusion. Smoke still curled from shattered rooftops, and the echo of last night's chaos lingered in the streets. The council muttered in hushed tones, fearful and resentful, while Alara moved through the halls with a determined stride. Jonah followed, silent as ever, his dark armor polished but streaked with yesterday's blood. The hum of tension seemed to cling to him, like the night itself refused to release him. "Tell me," Alara demanded as they entered a private chamber, "who are you really, Jonah Vale? What is your history?" He sighed, leaning against the wall, blade sheathed. "Do you really want to know?" She stepped closer. "I have to." Jonah's eyes darkened. "Then know this, I was raised where humans were sent to die or survive. Wars know one records, battles older than governments. I wasn't just trained to fight, I was trained to end fights before they could begin." Alara felt her chest tighten. "You're not exaggerating." "No," he admitted. "And I left that life behind to live as someone normal, someone who could love, someone who could," he paused, searching her eyes, "be loved." Before she could respond, a low vibration shook the chamber. Jonah's hand went instinctively to his blade. Ilara's pulse spiked. "What now?" Jonah didn't answer. Instead, he strode to the window, scanning the horizon. A black cloud had formed above the outskirts of the city, unnatural and heavy. "They're coming," he said. "Who?" "Not the assassins, not the hunters from last night. Something older, smarter. They've been waiting for the right moment." The council's warnings rang in her mind. Humans were fragile, unpredictable. They had underestimated Jonah. She realized now how little the galaxy understood them, and how little it understood him. Ilara grabbed his arm. "We can't fight them alone." Jonah's expression softened briefly. "Then we won't." By mid-afternoon, the courtyard became a battlefield once more. This time, the attackers weren't human assassins. They were enormous, four-limbed predators, skin black as obsidian, eyes glowing like molten cores. They moved with strategy, not chaos, and yet every attack Jonah anticipated. Alara had never seen someone so lethal, so controlled. He moved like a shadow blade whispering through the air, cutting, deflecting, dismantling. Each strike was precise, merciless, beautiful in its deadly grace. But she noticed something deeper. He wasn't enjoying it. Every blow carried weight, a burden of history he could not escape. When the last creature fell, Jonah didn't breathe a sigh of relief. He sheathed his sword and looked to Alara, voice steady but heavy. "They'll return," he said. Alara's stomach twisted. "They're stronger than anything we've faced." He shook his head. "They're human strength versus alien cunning. That's what they don't understand." She blinked. "You think we can win?" Jonah's dark eyes met hers. "I know we can, as long as we fight together." Night fell and the palace stood in eerie silence. Alara sat near the balcony, watching Jonah patrol the walls, blade ready, alert. She felt a strange mixture of fear and admiration. This was the man she had married, a man who seemed ordinary, yet held the weight of a hidden war on his shoulders. "You carry too much," she said softly. He stopped and turned, gaze locking on hers. "And yet you trust me enough to stay." Her voice trembled. I do." He took a slow step toward her. "Then you understand, I fight because I must, not for glory, not for the council, for you." Alara's breath caught. She had married him believing he was a simple man, a commoner. But every lie he had told, every secret he had kept, it was all to protect her. Suddenly, a faint shimmer appeared in the sky, a signal alien and deliberate. Jonah's eyes narrowed. "They're not done." Alara gripped his arm. "Then we prepare." He nodded, voice calm but resolute. Not just to survive, to win. Somewhere beyond the city, a figure watched. Cloaked in darkness, its voice a whisper that carried across the wind. The human married to the princess. He cannot hide forever. The galaxy will remember the name Jonah Vale. Ilara shivered. She realized with both dread and awe that she had not married a man. She had married a storm. And the storm was awake. The palace gates trembled under the weight of approaching forces. Ilara stood atop the balcony, heart-pounding. The city below was a chessboard of chaos. Alien warriors clashed with unknown predators, fire and sparks flying into the darkening sky. Rain had returned, soaking the streets, turning stone to slick mirrors of reflected horror. Jonah was beside her, blade drawn, eyes scanning the horizon. He moved with a quiet confidence that made her chest ache. She had long ago stopped questioning him. Now she simply watched, awed, terrified, and captivated. "They're stronger this time," Ilara whispered, voice barely audible over the roar of battle. Jonah's jaw tightened. "Yes, but strength is useless without strategy." He gestured toward the palace walls. "We hold here, we make them pay for every inch they try to take." Ilara nodded. Fear gripped her, but so did a spark of determination. She wasn't a warrior, but she could not stand aside while he bore the full weight alone. The first wave hit with a feral roar. Towering creatures, faster and deadlier than the ones before, surged against the gates. The guards faltered under the pressure. Jonah moved like a shadow in the storm. Each swing of his blade was precise, calculated. He anticipated every move, countered every strike, and yet there was no brutality in his face, only a quiet, unyielding resolve. Ilara could hardly breathe. She had seen him fight before, yes, but never like this. Never against something this relentless. A monstrous creature broke through the first line of guards. Its claws were like sharpened steel, its roar shaking the walls. It lunged at Jonah. He didn't hesitate. The blade in his hand sang through the rain, slicing cleanly. The creature stumbled, then fell, defeated. No flourish, no dramatic motion, just the calm certainty of someone who had done this countless times before. Ilara's knees nearly buckled. The man she had married, the one she thought was ordinary, was a force beyond comprehension. As the battle raged, she realized something terrifying. This wasn't just an attack, it was a hunt. They were after Jonah, not her, not the palace, him. And yet he never faltered. He moved among them like a storm contained in flesh, his every motion precise, deadly, unstoppable. By nightfall, the courtyard was littered with the remnants of the attackers. Jonah leaned against a shattered pillar, chest rising and falling steadily, eyes scanning for the next threat. Ilara approached him cautiously. "Jonah, you're—" she faltered. Words failed her. How could she describe what she had just seen? The calm power, the grace, the danger wrapped in a man she loved. He glanced at her, expression unreadable. "Alive," he said simply. "That's what matters." Her hands trembled as she reached for his. "You've been fighting all your life, haven't you?" "Yes," he admitted. "And I swore I'd never let it touch you, not here, not now." Her chest tightened. She had married a commoner, yes, but he had been anything but ordinary. He had been a weapon, a survivor, a storm that the galaxy had feared, and somehow, against every expectation, he was hers. The palace bells told a warning. From the horizon, another wave approached, even larger, faster, more cunning. Jonah tightened his grip on the blade. "Ilara, it's not over, it's never over." Her hands clenched his arm. "Then we face it together." A faint whisper floated through the rain, carried on the wind. Jonah Vale, the storm does not sleep, and the galaxy remembers. Ilara shivered, but this time it was not only fear, it was awe. The man she had thought she married as a commoner was not merely human. He was a force the universe had tried to bury, a storm that refused to die, and now he had chosen to stand with her. And together they would face whatever came next. The night was far from over, the shadows still moved, and the storm had only just begun. The palace lay in tense silence, broken only by the distant echoes of the last battle. Smoke curled from the outskirts of the city, and the streets below were littered with signs of carnage. Ilara stood in the grand hall, her hands clenched at her sides. She had watched Jonah fight, survive, and protect her against horrors beyond imagining, and still the fear lingered in her chest. Jonah entered behind her, dripping wet, his dark hair plastered to his face. The blade at his side gleamed faintly, almost as if it remembered the battles it had waged. "You've done enough for today," she said, voice trembling. "Even for you." He shook his head, eyes scanning the hall as if sensing threats she could not. "There is never enough," he replied, "not when they keep coming." Ilara's breath caught. "Then what do we do?" He stepped closer, placing a hand over hers. "We fight, but we fight smart and together." The palace gates shuddered suddenly, a faint vibration, a warning. Ilara's heart leapt. "More," she whispered. Jonah's eyes narrowed. "Not them, someone else." Before she could ask, the shadows moved inside the palace itself. Figures cloaked in darkness slipped silently through the corridors. They didn't roar, they didn't charge, they waited. Jonah drew his sword, the metal hummed alive in his hands. "Ilara," he said softly, "stay behind me and don't look away." The first attacker revealed itself, tall, angular, with eyes like black fire. It struck with impossible speed, yet Jonah met it without fear. The sword in his hand was a blur. The creature collapsed and the next surged forward. Ilara's chest tightened. She had known he was skilled. She had known he had fought before, but seeing it, the fluidity, the precision, the calm in the face of impossible odds, was more than awe. It was terrifying. And then she noticed it. Each strike wasn't just defense. Each movement of his blade told a story. It spoke of wars long ended, enemies long defeated, victories that no history remembered. The sword itself seemed to whisper, cutting not just the attackers but fear itself. It spoke of Jonah, the man, the weapon, the storm. The final attacker fell. Silence returned. Ilara stepped forward, her knees weak. "Jonah, what are you?" He sheathed the blade slowly, as if reluctant to return it to its resting place. "A man who survived," he said. "A man who loves you. A man who refuses to let the world take what he cannot give up." Her hands trembled as she touched his cheek. "I married a human, but he's not just a human." He smiled faintly, the first real smile in days. "I suppose not, but I am still me, still yours." From the balcony, the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. Light spilled into the hall, illuminating the wreckage, the blood, and the walls scorched by battle. Ilara's blue eyes met his dark ones. For the first time, she understood the truth. She had married a commoner, but the man she had chosen was anything but ordinary. "You saved me," she whispered. "No," Jonah replied, his voice steady and low. "I protected us, and now the galaxy knows my name again." Ilara's hand found his. "Then let it know what comes next." Jonah nodded. "Together." The palace bells rang again, but this time they carried a different sound. A promise, a warning, a challenge. Outside, the shadows stirred, distant but watching. The galaxy had remembered Jonah Vale. It had underestimated him. But it had not counted on the human who married the princess. Not counted on the storm they now represented together. And as the morning sun cut through the darkness, Ilara realized she had not married a commoner. She had married the sword, the storm, the protector of worlds. And the blade had spoken. The galaxy would never forget.